Around this time last year, Tarana Burke was on top of the world.
Yeah, the early part of 2021 was probably the greatest, one of the greatest moments in my life. It was the highest point in my life. I had been waiting my whole life to be an author.
As the founder of the Me Too movement, Tarana was finally experiencing that kind of liberation that comes from finally sharing your truth. Unbound is the name of her memoir, and it's also how she felt. She even got to co-write a book with one of her idols, Brené Brown. Both books made it to the New York Times bestseller list. After decades of struggle and pain and hard work, Tarana was reveling in her rewards. Then came Thanksgiving.
We had finished eating Thanksgiving dinner. Everybody was sitting around relaxing, and my mother answered the phone.
Tarana studied her mother as she held the phone to her face, her mother's smile beginning to fade.
My mother turned to me and she said, "Grandma has COVID." And I was, I was walking across from the dining room into the living room, and I stopped in my tracks and I stopped immediately and said a prayer. I said, "Okay, God, all right, it's fine." My grandma was 92. I said, "Okay, it's okay. It's okay. That's cool. Okay, it's gonna be okay. It's gonna be okay." From that moment until this, everything in my life started unraveling. That's when the tsunami started.
A tsunami. You know, you can't always name it when you're in it, but maybe you can look back on it and say, this is how I survived. Grief, renewal, and joy on this episode of Truth Be Told. Stay with us. Tarana. Oh my gosh, it's so great to see your face. The morning Tarana and I got on the phone together, she was experiencing that pep you get after a little rest and a hot shower, but she was still feeling raw. We all were. It was a few days after that tragedy in Uvalde, Texas.
I've gone through sort of what I've called my personal tsunami in the last 6 months. And then what's going on in the world has just been a layer.
Tarana's 92-year-old grandmother died 2 weeks after her family got that call on Thanksgiving Day. And at the funeral, 11 members of her family also got COVID.
Including myself and my husband and my daughter and my mother, who's 71, which was scary.
Stressed out and grieving, Tarana triggered a rare neurological condition that she was first diagnosed with after suffering a stroke back in 2020. She spent 9 days in the hospital, and when she was discharged, the doctor recommended she try to avoid stress. That's a tall order for a Black woman responsible for starting a movement that galvanized people all over the world to stand up against sexual abuse and rape culture.
Like if you have asthma, you carry around an asthma pump. But if you have a condition that's triggered by stress, I can't eliminate the outside stresses in the world, right? I can't stop people from sending me death threats. I can't stop, it's just really an interesting way to live.
Well, when you put it like that, right? Well, a little later, we're going to check in with mental health counselor Rian Roberson, who's going to give us some therapeutic practices on how to de-stress and also how to get out of that stressful cycle of hypervigilance. It's really good stuff. But first, Tarana and I kicked off our conversation by talking about the perception of having it all together. Thank you for being so open with me on this, because I'll tell you, when I talked to you last September for Fresh Air after reading your book, I felt like, okay, Tarana has it figured out. Like we talked specifically about, I know, we talked about things like trauma responses and overachievement and like having it all together. And you were very vulnerable even then, saying like, that is a myth. But I thought, okay, I want to get to where she is, where I can identify it. But what you are telling me is that like, this is a lifelong journey. that even at the highest of highs, you can still be at a place where you are navigating through these waters.
Yeah. Because what happens is you have a set of things figured out. You get a set of circumstances, right? So I'm thrust into the spotlight. That was a set of circumstances. It took me 3.5, 4 years to kind of figure out what this new life is, how to move through it, how to exist in it. I'm getting it. I'm figuring out. I'm on beat. And it was so much for me to figure this piece out and hold that. So when that curveball sort of came at me, it was like, I can't do this and that and be this to these people and to my family and to myself and this. And also grief is a trickster, right? Grief comes and it gets you, it does what it wants with you. It has its way with you, right? Grief will have its way with you. And so you can't plan to navigate grief in any kind of way.
That's right.
Grief and sad. That's why looking at how people are navigating the world, we lost 1 million people in this country from COVID.
1 million.
1 million. When you lose 1 million individual people, you leave behind hundreds of millions of mourners. While we are trying to, you can't quantify that amount of grief that's just in the air. It's just out there. We're walking around looking at people who are just going on through life, who are carrying that grief. And then you have these mass murders happening around us, and there's that grief, and then so I actually had this moment the other day, and I was texting a friend of mine when the Buffalo mass murder happened. I couldn't talk about it online. I couldn't post about it. I couldn't say anything about it. And, he texted me and he said, I can't go on Twitter because I'm so sick of the hot takes and the whatnot. And I said, you know what happened to me the other day? I said, I had raw human emotion. And I said, I'm kind of into it. I'm just going to sit with that. The names came up on my phone and I just wept so hard because those names were so Black. They were so Miss Celestine and Miss Pearl. And I just kept putting the Miss before them because they were aunties and neighbors. Those are my grandma's church friends. And the lady next door, and the man who fixed your car for free when your carburetor's broken, and those are the girl you went to Sunday school with. I know these Black folks, and my heart broke, and I felt, and it sounds, I don't know how this is going to translate for people, but I felt good about that heartbreak in some ways because I need my heart to break. I need to cry about this. I need to feel bad about it. I don't want to feel numb.
So many of us are there. We're there. One thing you shared the last time is that when Me Too became a hashtag and women all over the world began to share their stories online, you were actually really worried about that because you felt like, as someone who has worked with trauma survivors, once you open those wounds, you need guidance and help. We're seeing the same thing play out for every one of us who say, we are not going to go on Twitter or on social. We're going to just grieve. There are many more who have decided, okay, this is the only way that I can emote this intense pain that I'm feeling. Does that also concern you in this moment? And I'm just thinking about how we can be there for each other. We're consuming each other's grief, but we're not connected.
I know. I am absolutely concerned. Not just that we're not connected. We are. This is what I did write about after Texas. We are not built to hold this much. We're not built to know this much, right? Recently, it was a meme that said something about, is it just that there's more trauma or more crisis now, or is it that social media just gives us more information now
Right,
that,
right.
than it was before? Because it feels like it's one after another, after another, after another. And I thought about that, and I was like, I'm not sure which is true. Is it that there's more things happening now? But either way, it's too much information.
Yeah.
It's just it's too much happening, and I just don't think human beings are built to hold this much.
When we think about people in crisis, going back to where we are in this moment, how we're all carrying so much grief, so much pain, we have been taught to see the signs, though, for the people we love, like to try to measure how people are doing. Okay, are they acting out? Are they drinking too much or taking drugs or outwardly depressed? But that is really an opposition of how Black women are taught to show up, because
That's right.
we are the overachievers, the got it all together. So when you said to
I
me,
talk about that in the book too.
you did,
Oh.
yes. I mean, like, I've been sitting with this, Tarana. When you said to me that being an overachiever is a trauma response, it's like my entire life flashed before my eyes. I'm still unpacking that.
Oh, girl, it's a lot. It's a lot. Because if you grew up thinking you're either good or bad, why would you not? Of course, you're going to pour yourself into good. I want to be everything that is good. Of course, I want to have straight A's. Of course, I want to be the best athlete. Of course, I want to join all the things. I want to be in all the honors club. I'm going to be everything that is good.
That's how it showed up for you.
Absolutely. I'm going to be hyper focused on everything that makes me anything but that girl. The girl who I know is my true self. I don't want anybody to know who that girl is. I want to check all these boxes. And it's just, and I still struggle with that.
How have you been able
What's
to get
the
to a
purpose
place
of
of
this?
vulnerability to be able to say I need help, or to have the people who love you be able to love you and all the parts of you?
Truth. The truth of some of that is fatigue.
Just so tired of doing it. Yes.
It's just some of it is just plain fatigue. Let me tell you something. I can plainly remember the day I was living in Selma, working at the National Voting Rights Museum. I remember the day that I stood at the top of the steps. We used to plan this huge event called Bridge Crossing Jubilee. It's the commemoration of the Selma to Montgomery March. And I was one of the chief planners of that event. Standing at the top of the steps, and I fell asleep at the top of the steps. My girlfriend at the time, one of my best friends, was at the bottom of the steps, and she said, "Are you asleep?" She screamed up to the top of the steps, and I woke up. I lived in a perpetual state of exhaustion, trying to be all the things to all the people all the time, trying to work and raise my child, and it made no sense. In horrible relationships with myself, with the men in my life, I just got to a point of exhaustion, and I can't. Even now, there's some things I just can't. My brain, like when I go to try to be this thing or do this thing, be that person, my body says no. My brain says no. I know what you're trying to do. No.
You think it's age now where it's like, okay, look, you've been doing this for too long. You just can't.
Yeah, probably. My body and brain have conspired now. They're like, oh no, I know what you're trying to do.
Right.
My knees start talking to my ankles, and my ankles be kicking up to my toes, and it shoots right on up to my back, and they say,
But one thing you are so good at is identifying that in other people, though. Like, what do you do when you see that in your friends and the other people that you love, that they're in this same loop of like just overachieving and just working themselves to exhaustion?
The beautiful thing about my friend group now is that we are an amazing circle of truth tellers. I have found myself, I've landed in this beautiful circle of folks who are committed to being honest with each other. And so my girlfriend Yaba, who I just spoke to like yesterday, she said, Yaba, don't be mad at me if you listen to this podcast. She said something she said to me. I just walked out of something and I said, you need to walk into a therapist's office. She said, I walked away from social media and I said, you need to walk into therapist's office. We are candid and honest with each other. We have given each other permission to call each other in when we see each other in trouble, or just as much as we lift each other up and celebrate each other when we are doing well, we are also committed to taking care of each other when we're not. But also, even not just even in my friend group, I feel like I love Black folk. I love people. I really do. And I mean, it starts with my love for Black folk. And I say this to people all the time. Y'all should be glad and happy and celebrating the fact that I was raised in this movement work by Black women, because Black women have such deep compassion and love, and have imparted me with such deep compassion and love, that because I started that place, it resonates out for everybody, right? Mm-hmm. So my first and true love is for us, is for Black folks, but that love spreads to everybody. And so, I meet survivors all the time who think they need a thing from me. What they need is a spark to get inside themselves, right? They need a little bit of insight on how to get on this road to figure out how to get back to themselves. And I can hold your hand for 2 seconds, or look in your eyes, or give you a hug, and I can feel what I need to give you. I don't know what your therapist need to give you or whatever, but the thing that I need to give you, I'm going to give you. Because I've been poured into a lot. By the grace of God, people have poured into me for a long time.
It's what we can do for each other.
It's what we can do for each other, right? That's all we have. People pour in a little to you, you pour out a little to them. That's just what we have. It's not much, but that's really how we are surviving.
What are some of the other ways you nourish yourself, and you're nourishing yourself in this moment?
Oh, I have become a full-on plant mama.
Yeah,
I know.
Me too.
I know that's clear. Are you a plant mama?
Oh, absolutely. I'm gonna send you all my pictures of my beautiful plant babies. Yeah, I need to see yours
to show
too.
You right. Are you on? So I'm on this app. Do you use Greg? Have you heard of
What
Greg?
is Greg?
Greg. Yeah. Greg is this app online that you can keep up with all of your plants. The Virgo in me, I have to be organized. So I have over 100 plants. I have them all in Greg. I have different fertilizers from my sansevierias and my alocasias and the blah blah blahs and the blah blah. Oh girl, yeah, I have become a full on plant mama. And because I can't, so when they said de-stress, when the doctor's like, you gotta release, I can't meditate. I'm like, remember that old joke Ellen used to tell where she was like, every time she sit down to meditate, she had a Tide commercial.
Yeah.
Mama keeps That's me.
What are they named after?
Yep.
Like mine are named after Black history figures like Ida B. Wells and Malcolm X and all of that.
I have a lot of them. I started off with, I have like Zaki and Tony and like literary figures. And then a lot of them are Black names. Like I have Kwashiba and Star Asia, Star Deja, and Star Quasia. Those are the triplets. I have some of my favorite teachers from school. Like, this is LaShawn DeVoe. That was my math teacher in high school. Just,
It takes you out of yourself.
It does. So she's recent, and I named the Buffalo Survivors. I started giving names from some of the Buffalo Survivors. So this is Miss Celestine. I just got her a golden pothos. I just, So instead of meditation, and I just water my, like, that's my meditation, and I really love it. It is. I know my husband is like, baby, you got to stop. You got to stop buying plants.
He said
But
that? He told you that?
no, but I know he's thinking it in his brain.
Because I wish my husband would. I wish he would say that. I mean,
No, he hasn't said it out loud.
yeah.
But I'm sure. But let me tell you, secretly though, when we go to the little places where we get the plants, he'll like, oh, that one is nice, baby. Oh, look at that one. That's so. I think he likes it too. I think he likes
it too. It keeps you out of your. I mean, my kids are actually sort of jealous of them. My son was like, "You act like they're really children," and I was like, "Well, come help me water. That would be helpful."
Exactly. Yeah. Y'all are big now. I need little babies.
6 months, 7 months away from this time when your life turned upside down, how would you categorize this moment that you're in?
I think I am. I mean, I still probably cry every day about my grandma. Like a little bit, not as much. It's not full on, bawling like I was, but I think I'm maybe transitioning a little bit. I'll be 50 next year, and I'm trying to figure out what the next phase of my life is, I guess. The next thing is for me. We're coming up on the 5th anniversary of the hashtag going viral, and we have all of these big plans. So I'm in this space of, feels like everything is about renewal. I want to move into whatever's next for me personally, right? I'm listening to my heart. I'm listening to my body. I'm listening to the universe, to God, just trying to sit still and listen and like not be numb. I just don't want to be numb. I want to feel things. I want to hear things. I want to connect.
I think so many of us collectively, we're at this moment where we can't not feel our feelings. We can't not be in those depths of despair. And so much of what you're saying is giving us permission for that. Like,
I sat down the other day and I just felt like it may not be well received, but I started to write an essay saying, I want us to cry. Like, I know that's not the way everybody grieves, and I know that's not the way everybody processes, but man, I told you I had that cry. I just wanted to share that because I don't want us to look away. And however you grieve, however you process, I want us to try. It's so scary. It is so scary. I'm not by any means trying to say that I'm boldly walking ahead, and I just don't feel that way at all. My stomach turns. Even when I'm saying this to you, I feel like my goosebumps and a little bit of tremors, and I feel like even now I feel a little bit weepy. But I also feel a little bit powerful, right? It feels like the way to gain my power back is through this. I have felt powerless for a long time, and almost like, not that anything I said before wasn't true, but it wasn't true enough, if that makes sense. Do you know what I mean? Like, when I finished writing the book, I think I might have said this to you in the last interview, like, I found a sense of power from telling myself the truth. I told myself more truth than I had told myself before, and I really felt that, and now this is more truth. And I'm like, in the TED Talk I did, I talked about an accumulation of feelings making me feel numb. I just don't want that numbness anymore. I want to feel, because what these people, and when I say people, like the Republicans and the right wing and all these crazy conservatives who are trying to separate us from our humanity, really.
Yeah.
I don't want to lose my power at this moment, because I feel like this is the moment where I need the most power. I want to feel, I want to have the most strength I can have. I want to build up every bit of power that I can muster up, because I feel like, and I want all of us to feel everything. I want us to cry. I want us to mourn. I want us to like walk through this moment and feel it, see it, understand it, and connect with each other. Not silo, not fight, but like see it for what it is, because we need each other. I want to be in full renewal in this moment, you know, and get all my strength. I'm eating my vegetables. So, oh, girl, I'm sorry.
Don't be sorry. This is 100% real. Tarana Burke, thank you so much as always. It has been such a pleasure to be in conversation with you.
Oh, anytime. I really enjoy talking to you. I really do.
I am Rian Roberson, they, them, based in Seattle, Washington, and I'm a licensed mental health counselor.
Here's something that's not a secret, but it might be a surprise. We've been talking about the virtues of therapy on this show since season 1, that very first episode, but I have yet to find the right therapist. I'm getting on it though. We're going to have a link to some great resources to find a Black therapist and some ways to find the right fit. In the meantime, this mini session that we're about to get into with therapist Rian Roberson, it's just as much for me as it is for you. Rian, you talk about in your work quite a bit anxiety and hypervigilance. And I was thinking about what that might look like, particularly for Black women who look like they have it all together. Can you first define hypervigilance and what it may look like in a person who seems like they have it all together?
Ooh, I feel like you kind of answered the question right there. Like the big tell is that they seem like they have it together. What I think that comes from is this internal knowing that we don't have the same safety nets as other people. And it's really important for people like us to show up and perform perfection and excellence and sometimes like superhuman powers. And it's the kind of like tangible power that other people feel like, oh, this person's got it. They can take on a little bit more. It's a survival mechanism, like this urgency to be perceived as super powerful. And that's usually completely inverse of what people are really dealing with.
How do we recognize when we're being hyper vigilant?
Ooh, that's a sneaky one. You might only ever notice in retrospect. And this is something that I actually got from Redsma Meniken. I was in a workshop with him. He's the best. And
Isn't he? He's a friend of the show, and
yes,
every time
I
he
saw
speaks,
that he was on here.
Yeah.
Oh, right. I'm just like, whew. So when I was in a workshop with him, he would pause throughout the day to remind us, Black folks, those of us that have Black bodies, to turn our head left and right and look for an exit.
Yes.
And what I noticed in that moment is that I always want to do that, but I don't do that because I don't want white people to see me looking nervous.
Oh, ooh.
And especially growing up in Seattle, I don't want to look like that. So just that conversation brought to my attention the fact that I am usually hyper vigilant and then suppressing it.
Yes.
And so now what I do is like, I try to find a reasonable balance of vigilance. So not maybe the hyper side where I am looking for something to go wrong every 5 feet, but maybe I allow myself to survey my surroundings, orient myself to the exit, and let myself know that if something bad happens, I know what to do.
You know, this, I've seen a lot of violence in my work, horrible things happening to good people. I've consoled a lot of people who have lost loved ones. I've seen dead bodies and body parts. And I've always felt like
Wow.
I could never talk about how this impacts me because just as an observer, these horrible things are happening to other people. They're not happening to me. But internally, the worst case scenario is always in my head, always. My husband going to the grocery store, my kids going to school. And it's hard not to have
Yes.
these intrusive thoughts. But the thing about this moment that we're living in is that now everyone around me is speaking openly about their intrusive thoughts too. And it feels really scary. How do we not let intrusive thoughts take over our lives?
That's a great question. And sometimes it's, like I like to acknowledge when we have to do a tremendous amount of labor. And that's one of those things that's really tricky because the intrusive thoughts and the brain's ability to catastrophize comes from a very valid place. Like our body's number one job is to keep us alive at all costs, not comfortable. And so our brain is an expert, just ready to go with like the worst case scenario that you could possibly need to prepare for. And it comes from an adaptive place. And therefore, it takes us a lot of mental energy to engage with that and let us know that we're actually not in that worst case scenario. That worst case scenario isn't likely, and especially in the wake of multiple shooting events, our nervous systems are completely keyed up, and they're like, "Oh, see, look, I have the evidence. This could totally happen." But we still got to go to that grocery store. Still got to send our kids to school. So, how do we do this? So, first of all, I'm always going to advocate for therapy. That's just a given for me. And with a therapist, each person can find an avenue to doing that work that's specific to them. But some general takeaways, the first things I think about are connecting with the body. So when I think about when those catastrophizing thoughts take over, all of a sudden you're just this floating head and you've lost your body completely. And then you're just like in this rat race of thoughts going on. So the first thing I particularly do, I have an old shoulder injury. So I tend to reach for my left shoulder and I grab my shoulder and just squeeze it. And I kind of reconnect my brain to my body and let me know I hear it and I have a little dialogue with myself. So say I have anxiety about going to the grocery store. Hey, I hear you. Yeah, I heard the news too. That's really intense. We got to get groceries. The fridge is empty.
You're
But I
talking
hear
to your
you.
body.
And then
Yes.
I talk to my body, and I give it gratitude for the hard work it's doing to keep me alive and well, and all the effort into the hypervigilance. I thank it, and I allow it to be at ease, because that hypervigilance isn't going to serve me when I go to the grocery store. Because it's also important that I not be in my head and I be present for what's going on around me. Because if something does go down, I want to be able to make informed decisions and not
Right.
just surrender myself to what my brain thinks I need to do.
You saying this makes me think about some of the things that we know you do outside of work. You told us that you kayak, you do martial arts. And one thing that struck me about these activities is that it requires you to use your body to accomplish a thing. Can you explain how using your body can be therapeutic in getting out of your head?
Right. So I think where we are in our culture right now, we're very brain centric. And I think we got kind of marvel about our ability to think and overthink things. And there's kind of an illusion that we can control everything with our thoughts. And I think that largely the body has been left out of the conversation, the holistic conversation of what health means. I gravitate specifically to practices that force me to be present. And that's another thing that I think happens with this like lifestyle of hypervigilance. To get a break from it, a lot of us like turn to devices that we listen to all day long, myself included. And we can be in our heads, out of our bodies, and very disconnected to the here and now. So I gravitate towards activities that force me to be here and present with my eyes open, that relies on like the reflexes of my body and my responsivity to like the situation for me to be successful. And there tends to be consequences built into the two particular things. So martial arts, if I am not present for what's going on in front of me, I could get popped in the face.
Right, right.
I don't want that. Even if I am daydreaming too much in my kayak, I can tip over, and I don't want that either. So, creating situations that force me to do my best work while being fully present, trying to integrate my mind and body those are practices that I cannot let go of.
Yeah. As you said, I mean, as a therapist, the one device is therapy. Culturally, we are coming around to therapy, but historically, Black communities have been very averse to therapy on a very practical level. Sitting down in front of another person, talking through things. Why is therapy therapeutic? Why is it important?
First thing I think about is that we're deeply social creatures. And again, like going back to what I just said about getting in our heads so much, like we get in our heads and sometimes our brains offer us like less than helpful advice, maybe these catastrophic suggestions that if we go to the grocery store, we're going to get shot up. And again, that could be based in truth, but there's other objective realities available to us. But when we're in that stew, with it just swirling around in it, it's really hard for us to conjure up other perspectives at that time. Like when we're in that brain state, it's really, really hard to get any logic in there from ourselves. And because we are so social, we tend to really validate another person who's listening to us and hearing us and can give us objective feedback about ourselves.
Right. And I also want to say the distinction I also want to make here between a therapist and, say, your friends and your family members is this person is also not connected to you in your personal life and maybe does not have and absolutely does not have a personal stake in the decisions you make, the thoughts that you have. That is why it's important that it's an anonymous person or a person that's not part of your life.
Exactly, exactly. And that's the thing that comes up when people say, "Hey, how can I show up for my friends more?" I'm like, "Well, there are limits to how much you can do because we come into our interpersonal relationships with an agenda that they feel a certain way. And a lot of us, again, social creatures, we want to feel like the powerful person in their life. They gave them the sage advice they needed in the 11th hour. But that's really more about us as individuals and not really giving that person the objective perspectives that really help them make their decisions. And that's where the work in therapy really is.
Rian, this has been amazing. Thank you so much for this conversation.
Totally my pleasure.
Man, I wish Rian was my therapist. If only I lived in Seattle. Well, the good thing is they've given us a bunch of great resources for us to find the perfect therapist for ourselves. And we're going to have a link to all of those resources on our Instagram and our Twitter. Follow us, first of all, if you don't already. Our Twitter handle is Dear Truth Be Told. You can also find us on Instagram at Dear TBT. I also want to know what you're doing to de-stress, as Tarana's doctor told her to do. It's a hard thing to do and to know and to measure. But one thing that I'm doing that Nap Ministry founder Trisha Hersey told us last season to do is just rest. Take more naps. Go to sleep earlier. The other day, I actually bought the most expensive pillows of my life and very high thread count sheets. So we'll see how that works. Let us know what you guys are into. You can also email me directly. You know I read all of your emails. That's at Tonya@deartbt.com. That is Tonya at deartbt.com. Truth Be Told is a production of TMI and is produced by Enrico Benjamin, Phyllis Fletcher, and Aisha Brown, in association with Fearless Media. Our theme music is Rest by Otis McDonald and Zor's Moon by Candace Hoyes. A special thanks to B.A. Parker, Adama Imeson, Rochelle Roberts, and Sam Rafelson. And a thank you to Heising Simons and the Ford Foundation for funding Truth Be Told. I'm Tonya Mosley. Until next time.